inmates calling me by name, as my institution, I'm calling some of them by name.
The threat and danger has to be imminent, or they have to have been under a reasonable belief that that threat or
Well, Ashley, at this point, it appears that the jury will likely deliberate into the night. This after a day that included surprise testimony.
This defendant is charged with the crime of conspiracy.
In the case, Martha Childress.
Today's testimony involved the bullet that changed her life, but also a jailhouse conversation.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Hunter and the Hunted. Michael Flame Smith was found guilty on Friday by a Lee County jury of being a member of the mob that slayed and brutalized Cornelius McClary, a fellow prisoner, during a violent gang fight that resulted in a prison riot in 2018 that claimed the lives of 7 prisoners. The verdict was rendered on the afternoon of the 4th day of the trial in the 115-year-old courthouse located in downtown Bishopville, Lee County, following less than an hour of deliberation. Featuring sobering testimony that highlighted the harsh realities of prison life, it was the first trial of any prisoner charged in the Lee Correctional Institution riot on April 15, 2018, which was one of the worst prison riots in the country in the previous 25 years. Trial Judge Farrell Cothran Jr. sentenced Smith to 45 years in prison, 30 years for the mob slaying, and an additional 10 years for having a weapon in prison. In addition, Smith was sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy, which will run concurrently with the 40 years he already served for the first 2 crimes. 2015 marked the year when Smith was found guilty of attempted slaying in connection with the shooting of Martha Childress, a freshman at the University of South Carolina. According to the evidence that was given at Smith's trial, Childress was left permanently crippled as a result of Smith firing a stolen Glock arm on a crowded sidewalk in 5 Points when he was under the influence of marijuana and excessively intoxicated.
Day of testimony in the Michael Juan Smith trial for his involvement in a Lee County prison riot in April.
In the case, Martha Childress.
Today's testimony involved the bullet that changed her life, but also a jailhouse conversation.
Inmates calling me by name, as my institution, I'm calling some of them by name.
Right now, the fate of a young man accused of shooting and paralyzing a USC student is in the hands of a jury in Columbia.
Michael Juan Smith is his name, and he's facing several charges for his role in the riot.
Initially, he was sentenced to 40 years in prison. However, in 2020, the state Supreme Court overturned the conviction. Since that time, he has been held at the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, which is located in Richland County. This past week, during the trial that took place in Lee County, major things that occurred that evening were recounted in public and in such detail in a formal setting for the very first time. The highest security facility was the location of the disturbance, which took place in 3 different dorms. Nonetheless, the prosecution of Smith principally relied on testimony and evidence connected to events that took place in his building. During the period beginning, the prosecution had produced 8 witnesses, while the defense had only 1 witness, Smith, who was 31 years old and testified. Smith claimed that he had slayed McClary by knifing him in self-defense. One of the most important pieces of evidence that the prosecution presented was prison surveillance footage from multiple cameras. This tape showed a crucial 2 minutes before McClary passed away. Man of Peace. Prosecutors Barney Guise and Margaret Scott made fun of Smith's account of what happened in self-defense during morning's arguments to the jury, which consisted of 8 women and 4 men. They portrayed Smith as a vindictive assassin who attacked and knifed McClary, who was defenseless and unarmed when he was lying on the jail dorm floor, gushing blood from about 90 prior knife wounds. Prosecutors said that Smith was a member of the group of Blood gang members that pursued McClary as he attempted to flee. Guise showed the jury evidence from prison films showing Smith, a member of the Bloods gang, pushing through a swarm of other Bloods to follow McClary, who had fallen down a staircase. It looked like a bunch of sharks attacking poor Mr. McClary, Guise said. According to Guise, Smith hit and knifed McClary, a member of the Crips gang, twice at the foot of the stairs. Guise told the jury that Smith was driven by a desire for vengeance because a fellow Blood had been slayed in another jail dorm earlier that evening.
The state interviewed 3 witnesses. 2 of them were inside the prison the night of the riot, and the jury saw graphic images.
Friends in prison, and at the time, Smith told him a lot of personal information during a conversation they had back in February.
The state believes is for one to avail themselves of self-defense law in the state of South Carolina.
To where the defendant is. Okay. And what is this a photo of?
Your Honor, we had talked about the state of ground versus self-defense, etc.
Today, the state presented surveillance video from inside the prison, April 15th, 2018.
Guys snidely reminded the jury that throughout Smith's testimony, he had referred to himself as a man of peace. Guys remarked, "A man of peace goes the other way." McClary was the prey, according to Scott, who told the jury that this was a case of the hunter and the hunted, predator and prey. Scott quoted Voltaire, the French philosopher, when he reminded the jury that while to the living we owe respect, to the deceased we owe only the truth. The reality is that Smith repeatedly knifed McClary that night. That night, Smith wasn't afraid, rather, he was hunting. Pathologist Janice Ross, a prosecution witness, stated that McClary had sustained 101 knife wounds, some of which were minor cuts and others of which were fatal. Amy Zmrozek, the defense counsel, highlighted to the jury Smith's testimony that he had been afraid for his life during the several-hour-long disturbance and that earlier in the evening, a friend of his had been fatally knifed in a different prison dormitory. Zmrozek also accused the South Carolina Department of Corrections of neglecting to maintain a secure environment for its inmates. "Until I turn blue in the face, I will say that SCDC was the cause of this." She stated that one of the department's shortcomings was the absence of strong door locks, which may have stopped the slayings. Additionally, Zmrozek testified before the jury that despite Smith pushing his way to the front of the Bloods during the McClary incident, Smith was genuinely attempting to defuse the situation.
Michael Juan Smith did have a conspiracy, assault and battery that resulted in death and possession of a weapon.
The threat and danger has to be imminent, or have to have been under a reasonable belief that that threat or
Your Honor, may I approach?
It's a photo of
Assault, battery by mob, first degree resulting in death, and prisoner carrying arms.
Mother's heartbreaking plea. Smith was accused of conspiracy, first-degree mob attack and battery that resulted in demise, and inmate possession of a firearm. Smith was found guilty of all charges by the jury after they were given individual consideration. 7 prisoners lost their lives and 22 suffered serious injuries during the disturbance. Smith is the first prisoner to go on trial out of the 47 who were charged following the riots. 11 more people have entered guilty pleas to different offenses. In addition to Smith, 12 other defendants face charges related to the same mob conduct. Of them, 7 are still facing charges, while 4 have entered pleas to lesser ones. 1 prisoner accused of the offenses passed away. McClary passed away at the age of 33. News reports stated that he was due for parole in 2032 after serving a 31-year term for offenses including attack and crime and burglary. Guys emphasized to the jury that despite McClary's status as an inmate, he was entitled to life. Guys went so far as to paraphrase the English poet John Donne, saying, "Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Each man's demise diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind." Guys read the judge a letter written by McClary's mother, Marilyn Wilson, just prior to Smith's sentencing. "My only child was taken from me, and I still suffer from pain, anxiety, and depression," Guys wrote. "My grandson had to grow up without his incredibly loving father. I never stop wondering how someone could be so callous as to take that kind of life. My child was not a beast to be slayed." Director of the Corrections Department, Brian Sterling, told the media during the trial that inmate safety at Lee Correctional Institution has increased and that further improvements are in the works while standing alongside Guys' team of prosecutors and their staffs.
But we want to express our public appreciation for these law enforcement people.
Even with all the cameras that you have in there, there are still some blind spots, right? I'm sorry?
Yes, that's right.
Started today for the trial of an inmate accused of being involved in the 2018 Lee Correctional Institution riot.
Well, Ashley, at this point, it appears that the jury will likely deliberate into the night. This after a day that included surprise testimony.
Zoe, thank you. At the time of the riot, Michael Juan Smith was in prison for attempted murder and weapons convictions for a 5-point shooting.
This defendant is charged with the crime of conspiracy.
Only 30% of the prison's 1,000 inmates are currently categorized as maximum security, compared to all 1,000 at the time of the incident. Sterling indicated that the remaining ones are medium security. According to Sterling, inmates have the opportunity to do good, especially those serving lengthy terms. These people have the potential to change at any time. Both the Corrections Department and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division looked into the situation. In order to pursue instances involving prison riots in Lee County, the Corrections Department and Third Circuit Solicitor Ernest Chip Finney specifically heard Guys, a former Fifth Circuit solicitor. John Conrad, Stephen Lunsford, and Scott served as assistant prosecutors. Conrad is an assistant state attorney general, while Scott and Lunsford are special assistant attorneys general for the South Carolina Department of Corrections. Finney's circuit consists of 4 counties, including Lee County. Guys claimed that Smith's deceit was exposed during cross-examination. The jury frequently doesn't believe anything the witness says after they have lied, especially if the witness is the defendant. Now you can talk about it with anybody you want to. Cothran, who had instructed the jurors not to discuss the matter with anybody during the trial, said to them as he dismissed the jury, "I'm appreciative of your assistance." Oklahoma has rescheduled the execution of Michael Smith from Thursday, July 6, 2023 to April 4, 2024. Executions are carried out at 10 a.m. local time at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester, Oklahoma. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.